The darkness between the stars had never felt so cold. Commander Ji Woo stood before the observation window of Refuge Station Omega-7, watching the distant lights of patrol ships drift past like dying embers. Behind him, the command center buzzed with quiet desperation. Every screen showed the same story. Humanity was losing its final battle. 200,000 souls. That was all that remained of a species that once numbered in the billions. Ji Woo had watched Earth burn through a telescope when he was just a boy. He had seen Mars fall when he was a young officer. Now, at 46 years old, he commanded the last fragments of his people. And he knew their time was running out. Commander, the Council is requesting your presence. The voice belonged to Captain Taiyang, a man whose anger at the universe kept him fighting when hope had long since abandoned everyone else. His face was scarred from a Vreth plasma weapon. 3 jagged lines that ran from his temple to his JAWJ I Woo turned from the window. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. What's the news from the outer sensors? Nothing good. Taiyang pulled up a holographic display. Red markers swarmed across the star map like a plague. Vreth scout ships have been probing our defensive perimeter for 3 days now. They're mapping our positions. Everyone in the command center fell silent. They all knew what came after scouts. The Vreth Dominion had hunted humanity across the galaxy for 200 years. The insectoid aliens gave no quarter, took no prisoners, and offered no mercy. They wanted humanity erased from existence, and they were very close to achieving that goal. How long do we have? Ji Woo asked, though he dreaded the answer. Intelligence suggests 72 hours. Maybe less. Taiyang closed his fists. Their main fleet is gathering at the edge of the system. 72 hours. 3 days. Ji Woo felt the weight of those hours pressing down on his shoulders. The station had no serious weapons, no military ships capable of facing a Vreth battle fleet. They had mining vessels, transport shuttles, and a handful of patrol boats, with guns that might as well be throwing rocks. He walked through the corridors toward the council chamber, and everywhere he looked, he saw exhaustion. Families huddled in residential sections that were too crowded. Children who had never known Earth played in corridors that smelled of recycled air and desperation. Old men and women sat with distant eyes, remembering worlds that no longer existed. The council chamber was a converted cargo bay. 15 people sat around a salvage conference table, representing the last governments of humanity. They looked up when Ji Woo entered, and he saw the question in their eyes before anyone spoke. "We fight," Ji Woo said simply. "With what?" asked one counselor, a woman named Hana who served as their chief scientist. She was younger than Ji Woo, maybe 35, with hair that had gone gray from stress. "We've run every simulation. Even if we evacuate immediately, the Vreth will track us. We have nowhere left to run. Then we make our stand here." Taiyang spoke from the doorway behind Ji Woo. "We hurt them. We make them remember that humanity didn't just roll over and die." "That's suicide talking," another counselor said. "We have children here. Families. We can't just—" The lights flickered. Everyone froze. The station's power had been stable for months. A flicker meant something was wrong. Hana's communication device beeped urgently. She grabbed it, listened, and her face went pale. "Commander, you need to come to the science lab. Right now." They ran through the corridors, Ji Woo and Taiyang following Hana as she sprinted toward the research section. The lab was chaos when they arrived. Scientists crowded around sensor displays, talking in excited, frightened voices. "What is it?" Ji Woo demanded. Hana brought up a massive holographic display. It showed the region of space they called the Scar, a spatial anomaly that had existed on the edge of the system for as long as anyone could remember. Sensors couldn't penetrate it. Ships that went too close experienced instrument failures. Most people avoided it entirely. "Something's coming through," Hannah said, her voice shaking. "The energy readings are off the scale. Mass displacement indicates something enormous. Something the size of a capital ship." "Breath?" Taeyang asked, his hand moving to the pistol at his belt. "No. The signature is completely different. It's not matching anything in our databases." Hannah zoomed in on the readings. "Whatever it is, it's pushing through the anomaly. The amount of energy required to do that should be impossible." Ji-Woo stared at the display. A small part of him, a part he thought had died years ago, felt something strange. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. Hope. "How long until it's through?" he asked. "Minutes. Maybe seconds." "The readings are fluctuating." The entire science lab fell silent. Every eye turned to the main display screen, where cameras focused on the scar. For a moment, nothing happened. Space looked as it always did, black and empty, an eternal dot. Then the darkness tore open. Light poured through the rip in space, brilliant and blinding. Alarms shrieked as the station's sensors overloaded. The tier widened, and something began to emerge. Metal. Huge plates of scarred, battle-worn metal pushing through from somewhere else. It took 30 seconds for the ship to fully materialize. And when it did, Ji-Woo felt his breath catch in his throat. The warship was enormous, easily 2 kilometers long. Its hull was pitted with ancient battle damage, scorched by weapons and scarred by war. Gun batteries lined its flanks, massive cannons that belonged to another era. The design was human, but old. Very old. Hannah zoomed in on the hull markings, enhancing the image until words became visible through the carbon scoring and damage. TKSN, Indomitable 2247. "That's impossible," Taeyang whispered. "That ship was lost 600 years ago." Ji-Woo stared at the ghost ship floating before them, and for the first time in years, he smiled. The communication came 3 hours after the Indomitable appeared. The voice that crackled through the speakers was human, speaking in an accent that hadn't been heard in centuries. "This is Admiral Kyung-soo of the Terran Korean Space Navy, commanding officer of the TKSN Indomitable. We are requesting docking clearance and immediate situation report. Please respond." Ji-Woo sat in the command center, surrounded by his officers. Everyone was staring at him, waiting. He cleared his throat and pressed the communication button. "Admiral Kyung-soo, this is Commander Ji-Woo of Refuge Station Omega 7. Permission to dock granted." "Sir, I need to inform you that the date is November 14th, 2847. You've been missing for 600 years. Silence answered him. It stretched for so long that Ji-Woo wondered if the connection had been lost. Then the voice came back, quieter and confused. "Say that again." "The year, 2847, sir. The Indomitable disappeared in 2247 during the Battle of Titan's Gate. You were declared lost with all hands." More silence. "Then, request permission to come aboard your station. We need to talk face to face." The shuttle that docked 2 hours later was as old as the warship it came from. When the airlock opened, 6 people stepped through. They wore military uniforms from an era when Earth still had armies and navies. The man leading them was in his 50s, gray-haired and hard-eyed. His uniform displayed admiral's stars. "I'm Kyung-soo," he said simply. "This is my second officer, Major Yoonji, and Lieutenant Dae-hyun from navigation. We need answers, Commander." They gathered in the council chamber. Ji-Woo watched the admiral and his officers carefully. These were soldiers from humanity's past, trained to fight wars that were already ancient history. Major Yoonji, a woman with cybernetic enhancements visible on her arms and neck, stood like a coiled spring. Lieutenant Dae-hyun, younger than the others, maybe in his late 20s, kept looking around with wide eyes. "Tell us what happened," Kyung-soo said. Tell us everything. Hannah stepped forward. She had prepared a presentation, knowing this conversation would be necessary. The holographic display activated, showing images that made the visitors from the past flinch. The ship you fought in 2247, the Battle of Titan's Gate, you encountered a spatial anomaly. Our best analysis suggests you were caught in a time dilation field. For you, only 3 years have passed. For the rest of the universe, 600 years have gone by. Daehyun made a choking sound. My family. My wife. My daughter. She was only 5 years old. They're gone, Hana said quietly. I'm sorry. Everyone you knew is gone. Eunji put a hand on Daehyun's shoulder, but her eyes stayed on Hana. What about Earth? What about the Terran Federation? Jiwoo stood. This was his responsibility to explain. Earth was destroyed 400 years ago. The Vreth Dominion arrived in our galaxy 230 years ago. They've been systematically hunting humanity ever since. Mars fell. The colony worlds fell. Everything fell. He pulled up the current star map. This station holds the last 200,000 humans in existence. There are no governments, no fleets, no armies. Just us. Kyung-soo sat down heavily. His face had gone gray. 200,000. We had over 12 billion when we left. Yes, sir. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was steady, but Jiwoo could hear the pain underneath. We can't go back, can we? Even if we wanted to. Hannah shook her head. The anomaly collapsed after you came through. The energy required to create another one would be beyond our capabilities. I'm sorry, Admiral. You're trapped here with us. Eunji moved to the window, looking out at the refugee ships docked around the station. How long do you have? The Vreth fleet arrives in 60 hours, Taeyang said. He had been standing at the back of the room, watching the newcomers. They'll destroy the station and everyone on it. Do you have weapons? Defenses? Kyung-soo asked. Nothing that would matter against a Vreth battle fleet. The Admiral stood and walked to the window beside Eunji. He stared out at space for a long time. His officers waited, and Jiwoo realized they were letting him think. These were people who trusted their commander completely. Finally, Kyung-soo turned back. The Indomitable still has 3,000 crew. We're carrying full weapons payload from our last battle. Antimatter torpedoes, rail cannons, particle beams. We were the most advanced warship of our time. That was 600 years ago, one of the counselors said. Your technology is ancient. Ancient technology that was built for one purpose, war. Eunji spoke without looking away from the window. Our ship doesn't have fancy shields or stealth systems. We have armor and guns. Lots of guns. Daehyun wiped his eyes and straightened. Sir, what are your orders? Kyung-soo looked at each of his officers in turn, then at Jiwoo. We were supposed to save our Earth. We failed at that. The enemy we fought sent us into that anomaly, and we've lost everything because of it. But we're still soldiers. We still have our ship and our weapons. He walked to the star map and studied the Vreth fleet positions. You said 200,000 humans remain. That means humanity still exists. That means we still have something to fight for. You can't win, Jiwoo said softly. The Vreth have 500 warships in that fleet. Maybe. Kyung-soo smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. But we were trying to get home for 600 years. We thought we'd see our families again. We thought we'd retire and drink and tell stories about the war. He turned to face the council. All of that is gone. Our homes are gone. Our loved ones are dust. Everything we fought for is dead. His voice grew harder. But you're not dead. Those children we saw in the corridors aren't dead. Humanity isn't dead yet. Eunji moved to stand beside her admiral. We didn't save our Earth. Let us save yours. Daehyun joined them. We have nothing left to lose. Ji-woo felt something break inside his chest. It might have been despair finally giving way. It might have been hope taking root. He stood and offered his hand to the admiral. Then we fight together. Kyung-soo gripped his hand firmly. Yes, we fight together. And we make them remember that when you threaten humanity, we don't surrender. We hit back. The council members stood, one by one. Taeyang came forward, nodding to Yoonji with respect. Hannah approached Daehyun, already thinking about how to integrate old technology with new. Outside the window, the Indomitable hung in space like a promise from the past. Its scarred hull reflected the station's lights, and for the first time in years, the refugees of humanity looked at the darkness and felt something other than fear. The next 48 hours transformed Refuge Station Omega 7 from a place of waiting to die into a place of preparing to fight. Admiral Kyung-soo moved through the station with purpose, and his crew followed his example. The Indomitable's 3,000 soldiers brought with them something the refugees had forgotten, the belief that humanity could still bite back. Taeyang stood in the Indomitable's marine bay, watching Major Yoonji demonstrate combat techniques to his militia. The Major moved like violence given human form. Her cybernetic enhancements made her faster and stronger than normal humans, but it was her skill that impressed him. She could take down 3 opponents in seconds. Your form is sloppy, Yoonji said to one of Taeyang's fighters. You're telegraphing every move. The Vreth will gut you in the first exchange. The fighter, a young woman named Baora, tried again. This time Yoonji nodded. Better. Remember, they're faster than you. You need to be smarter. Taeyang approached when the training session paused. My people aren't soldiers. Most of them were farmers, engineers, teachers before the Vreth came. Then we make them soldiers in 2 days. Yoonji wiped sweat from her face. What about you, Captain? Were you a farmer? I was a teacher. History. Taeyang touched the scars on his face. The Vreth taught me a different kind of lesson. Good. Anger is useful if you control it. Yoonji looked at the assembled militia. These people will fight because they have no choice. That makes them dangerous. We just need to give them the tools. In the engineering sections, Hana worked alongside the Indomitable's technical crew. The old ship systems were fascinating to her. Everything was mechanical, built before the age of smart computers and automated systems. They were backup systems for the backup systems, all designed to keep fighting even when critically damaged. Your weapons are kinetic, Hana said to the chief engineer, a woman named So Young who had grease permanently embedded under her fingernails. Rail cannons that fire solid projectiles. That's right. We accelerate tungsten slugs to a fraction of light speed. So Young patted a massive cannon assembly with affection. These guns can punch through anything. The Vreth use energy shields. They've never faced kinetic weapons. Hana felt excitement building. Their shields are designed to disperse energy. Solid matter might pass right through. Then we'll give them a history lesson. So Young grinned. Old school beats new school. In the command center, Ji-woo and Admiral Kyung-soo studied tactical displays. The Vreth fleet had been detected at the system's edge, exactly where intelligence predicted. 500 warships, more than enough to destroy a defenseless refugee station. We can't fight them directly, Ji-woo said. We'd be destroyed in minutes. We don't fight them. We fight one ship. Kyung-soo highlighted the largest vessel in the Vreth formation. Their command carrier. Intelligence says their queen is aboard. Kill the queen. Kill the fleet's coordination. The Vreth are hive species. Without her, they'll break. Ji-woo traced the path from their position to the command carrier. But we'd have to go through their entire screening force. Yes, which is why the Indomitable goes along. Kyung-soo looked at Ji-woo. Your people evacuate. Take every ship you have and run for the coordinates we discussed. If we fail, you might have time to escape. And if you succeed, then humanity gets to survive a little longer. The Admiral smiled grimly. That's all we've ever asked for. A little more time. In the gunnery section, Lieutenant Dae-hyun was teaching young Min-ho how to operate the targeting systems. The boy was 16, an orphan who had volunteered to fight. Dae-hyun saw his own daughter in Min-ho's eyes, saw the determination to protect what little remained. The key is prediction, Dae-hyun explained, guiding Min-ho's hands over the controls. Ref ships are fast, but they follow patterns. Watch how they move, anticipate where they'll be. Min-ho fired a simulation. The shot went wide. He cursed and tried again. Don't be frustrated. You're learning in days what took me months. Dae-hyun reset the simulation. My daughter wanted to be a pilot. She was always playing with model ships. What was her name? Min-ho asked quietly. You, Jin. She would have been your age if... Dae-hyun stopped, his voice catching. If time hadn't stolen her from me. Min-ho put his hand on Dae-hyun's arm. Then I'll fight for her too. For all the people we've lost. The lieutenant nodded, unable to speak. He reset the simulation again, and this time when Min-ho fired, the shot hit its target perfectly. Evening came. Though in space, it was only a measure of ship's time. The crew of the Indomitable gathered in the main hangar. Kyung-soo stood before them. 3,000 soldiers who had expected to go home and instead found themselves in a future where home no longer existed. You all know our situation, the Admiral said. His voice carried through the hangar without amplification. The Earth we knew is gone. The people we loved are gone. Everything we fought for in our war is dust. Silence answered him. These were people dealing with grief beyond measure. But humanity isn't gone. 200,000 of our descendants are alive on that station. They've suffered things we can barely imagine. They've watched their worlds burn and their people die. They're at the end of their strength. Kyung-soo's voice grew stronger. In 600 years, humanity never surrendered. They kept fighting, kept surviving, kept hoping that somehow they'd make it through. Now they have no hope left. Except us. He looked across the faces of his crew. We're ghosts from the past. We're soldiers from a war that ended centuries ago. We should be dead, but fate or luck or something else brought us here. To this moment. To this battle. Eunji stepped forward. We couldn't save our Earth, but we can save theirs. We can't win, someone called from the crowd. 500 enemy ships against one. You're right. We probably can't win. Kyung-soo smiled. But we can hurt them. We can make them pay for every human life they've taken. We can show them that humanity doesn't go quietly into the dark. He drew his sidearm and held it high. We're the Indomitable. We don't break. We don't bend. We fight until there's nothing left to fight with, and then we fight with our bare hands. The crew roared. 3,000 voices shaking the hangar. 3,000 soldiers who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Taeyang stood with his militia at the back, and he felt tears on his scarred face. Beside him, Baora gripped her rifle tightly. Around them, refugees who had become fighters stood straighter. In 48 hours, the Vreth would arrive. In 48 hours, the last battle for humanity's survival would begin. But looking at these soldiers from the past and the refugees they had inspired, Taeyang thought maybe they had a chance. Maybe ghosts could save the living after all. The Vreth fleet arrived like a swarm of locusts, 500 warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. Their ships were elegant and deadly, organic curves covered in bioarmor that pulsed with sickly light. They moved with coordinated precision, a hive mind directing hundreds of vessels as one, on the bridge of the Indomitable. Admiral Kyung-soo watched the enemy fleet spread out across his sensors. Behind him, the refugee ships were already fleeing, carrying the last humans to coordinates they hoped the Vreth wouldn't find. "All stations report ready," Yoonji said from her position. "Marines are prepared for boarding operations." "Gunnery reports all cannons loaded," Daehyun added. Beside him, young Minho sat at a backup targeting station, his face pale but determined. "Engineering reports the Singularity drive is charging," came So Young's voice over the comm. "Currently at 40%. 70%, and we can trigger it." Kyung-soo nodded. The Singularity drive was their final weapon, a prototype that could create a localized black hole. They had never tested it in combat. No one knew if it would even work. But if they could overload it inside the Vreth command carrier, the gravitational collapse would take dozens of enemy ships with it. "Now, take us forward." Full power to engines. The Indomitable surged ahead, alone against an entire fleet. The old warship's engines burned bright, pushing the 2-kilometer vessel toward the enemy. On the refugee transports, now hours away, Ji-woo watched the battle feed with his heart in his throat. The Vreth noticed a single human ship approaching. 50 vessels broke formation to intercept, moving with insectoid grace. They were sleek hunter-killers, each one armed with plasma weapons and protected by energy shields that shimmered purple in the void. "Enemy vessels opening fire," Daehyun reported. "Plasma torpedoes incoming. Evasive pattern Delta. Return fire with rail cannons." The Indomitable twisted, more agile than its size suggested. Plasma torpedoes streaked past, detonating in bright flashes where the ship had been seconds before. The old warship's rail cannons spoke in response, firing tungsten slugs accelerated to impossible speeds. The first Vreth ship died in silence. The kinetic rounds punched through its energy shield as if it wasn't there, penetrating the hull and tearing through vital systems. The vessel broke apart, spilling atmosphere and debris. "Direct hit," Minho shouted. Their shields didn't stop it. "Because they've never seen real guns before," Kyung-soo said grimly. "Keep firing. Make every shot count." The battle became a running fight through an asteroid field. The Indomitable used the ancient rocks as cover, emerging to fire devastating salvos before ducking behind planetary debris. Vreth ships exploded one after another, their elegant hulls no match for weapons that predated their entire civilization. But the old warship was taking damage. Plasma fire scorched the hull, melting through armor plating. A torpedo hit the port side, tearing open 3 decks and killing dozens of crew. Warning klaxons shrieked as damage reports flooded in. "Hull breaches on levels 7 through 9, someone reported. "Sealing emergency bulkheads." "Engineering, how's that Singularity drive?" Kyung-soo demanded. 65%, sir. "We need more time." Time was something they didn't have. The Vreth were adapting, changing their tactics. More ships were converging on the Indomitable's position. They had realized that this old human warship was actually dangerous. "Major Yoongi, prepare your Marines. We need that shield generator." A Vreth frigate had gotten too close, trying to ram the Indomitable. Yoongi saw her opportunity. She led 200 Marines into boarding pods, small armored capsules designed to punch through enemy hulls. "Launch," she ordered. The pods fired like bullets, crossing the space between ships in seconds. They smashed into the Vreth vessel's hull, drilling through bio-armor with spinning cutters. Yoongi was first through the breach, her cybernetic enhancements making her faster than the Vreth warriors that rushed to meet her. The fighting inside the alien ship was brutal and close. Vreth soldiers were insectoid nightmares, all chitin and claws. They moved on 6 legs and attacked with razor-sharp mandibles. But Yoonji's Marines had trained for 2 days with nothing to lose, and they fought like cornered animals. "Push forward." Yunji shouted, firing her rifle in controlled bursts. Engineering section, that's where the shield generator will be. They fought through corridors that dripped with organic fluids, stepping over alien bodies and lost Marines. Tai Yang's militia fighters were with them, and the refugees proved they could stand and fight when humanity's survival depended on it. Bo Ra took a Vreth claw to the shoulder, but kept firing. A Marine named Jae-soon lost his helmet but crushed a Vreth warrior's skull with his bare hands. These were humans pushed beyond their limits. Fighting with everything they had. EUN-G reached the engineering section and found the shield generator. It was a pulsing organic thing, grown rather than built. She placed charges around it carefully. Everyone back to the pods. 30 seconds until detonation. The Marines retreated fighting, dragging wounded with them. The charges exploded just as they cleared the breach, and the Vreth frigate's shields flickered and died. A follow-up shot from the Indomitable's rail cannons finished the crippled vessel. Shield generator retrieved, Eunji reported, back aboard the Indomitable. Her armor was scorched and dented, but she was smiling fiercely. Hannah, it's all yours. In engineering, Hana and So Young worked frantically to install the stolen Vreth shield technology. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't integrate fully with human systems, but it might buy them precious minutes of protection. Shields online, Hana reported. They're at 30% strength, but it's better than nothing. Singularity drive at 70%, So Young added. We can trigger it whenever you're ready, Admiral. On the bridge, Kyung-soo studied the tactical display. The Indomitable had destroyed 23 enemy ships, but they had paid for it. Half the crew was dead or wounded. The ship was leaking atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches. Fires burned in multiple sections. And ahead, the Vreth command carrier loomed like a mountain in space. 20 dreadnoughts surrounded it, each one larger than the Indomitable. They would never get close enough to deploy Marines. Daehan looked at his admiral, understanding what was about to be ordered. Beside him, Minho gripped his control station with white knuckles. All hands, this is the admiral, Kyung-soo said over the ship-wide comm. We're going through. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the escape pods, do it now. No shame in survival. No one moved from their stations. Very well. Kyung-soo allowed himself a small smile. Helm, ramming speed. All power to forward shields. Let's show these aliens what the Indomitable really means. The old warship surged forward, engines screaming as they pushed beyond safe limits. The dreadnoughts opened fire, and the universe became plasma and death. The Indomitable charged through the storm like a spear thrown by an angry god. For Earth, someone screamed. For humanity, others answered. The warship smashed into the screening force, armor crumpling, shields failing, but still it drove forward. Still it refused to stop. The command carrier was ahead, close now. So close they could see the organic patterns on its massive hull. Singularity drive ready, So Young reported. Her voice strained. Prepare to fire boarding pods, Kyung-soo ordered. We're going inside that carrier, and we're taking our bomb with us. The Indomitable crashed against the command carrier's shields, and the battle reached its final desperate phase. The Indomitable's hull screamed as it ground against the Vreth command carrier's shields. Massive ship against massive ship, locked together in a death embrace. On the bridge, warning klaxons wailed as systems failed one by one. Hull integrity at 15%. Someone reported through the chaos. We're breaking apart. Admiral Kyung-soo ignored the warnings. He had made his choice. His crew had made theirs. They would finish this or die trying, and death held no fear for ghosts who had already lost everything. Eunji, launch your Marines. Plant that singularity drive inside their hull. Major Eungi stood in the Marine Bay with the survivors of her force. 200 had started the mission. Fewer than 80 remained. They were bloodied, exhausted, and ready to finish what they had started. "This is a one-way trip," Unji told them honestly. "We get inside, we plant the drive, and we hold position until it detonates. No one's coming back. No one left." Tae-yang stood among them, his militia fighters beside the Indomitable's Marines. The Aura checked her rifle one last time. A dozen others, humans from past and present, united in one final stand. "Then let's make it count," Tae-yang said, his scarred face grim. The boarding pods launched directly at the command carrier, drilling through shields already weakened by the Indomitable's bulk. They punched into the organic hull like bullets into flesh, and the Marines poured through into the alien vessel's interior. The command carrier was enormous inside, with cathedral-like chambers that stretched beyond sight. Everything was grown rather than built, walls that pulsed with biological processes, and floors that felt wrong under human feet. "Move, move!" Yunji shouted, leading the charge. 2 Marines carried the Singularity Drive between them, a device the size of a cargo container humming with barely contained power. The breath came in waves. Warrior forms bred specifically for combat rushed to defend their queen. They were larger than the soldiers the Marines had faced before, armored in thick chitin and armed with biological weapons that spat acid and fire. The fighting was savage. Humans fell, torn apart by alien claws. But for every human that died, 3 Vreth fell with them. These were soldiers who knew this was their last battle, and they made every bullet count on the Indomitable's bridge. Kyung-soo kept his ship pressed against the carrier, using his vessel as a shield to buy the Marines time. Vreth dreadnoughts hammered his hull with everything they had. Whole sections of the ship tore away, spinning off into space. "Sir, engineering is gone," Daehyun reported, his voice cracking. "So Young and her entire team are dead." Kyung-soo felt each death like a knife, but he couldn't stop. "Not now. Keep weapons firing. Kill anything that tries to reach the Marines." Beside Daehyun, Minho worked his targeting station with tears streaming down his face. But his hands were steady, and every shot found its mark. The boy had become a soldier in fire and blood deep inside the command carrier. Yunji and her Marines fought their way toward the core. The Vreth Queen was there. They could feel her presence like a pressure on their minds. The hive was screaming through some psychic connection, calling all defenders to protect their mother. There, Yunji pointed ahead. A massive chamber opened before them, and at its center sat something that made their minds recoil. The Vreth Queen was enormous, a bloated thing that pulsed with alien life. Smaller Vreth swarmed around her, defending their matriarch. "Plant the drive," Yunji ordered. "Hold this position." The Marines formed a defensive circle while the Singularity Drive was activated. The device began charging its final sequence, building toward the gravitational collapse that would consume everything nearby. The Vreth threw everything at them. Warrior forms crashed against the human position in waves. Tae-yang fought with his rifle until it ran dry, then with his knife, then with his bare hands. Baziora stood back to back with an Indomitable Marine, firing until her ammunition was gone. "Drive armed," someone called. 90 seconds to detonation. Yunji looked at her remaining Marines. Maybe 20 left alive. All of them wounded. All of them still fighting. "It's been an honor," she said simply. "The honor was ours, Major," Tae-yang replied, crushing a Vreth warrior's head with a rock. "Tell my story to the children." "I will," she promised, though she knew she would never leave this chamber. On the Indomitable, proximity alarms screamed. The Singularity Drive was reaching critical mass. In 90 seconds, it would create a black hole that would consume the command carrier and everything around it. "All hands, abandon ship," Kyung-soo ordered. "Get to the escape pods." "That's an order." With respect, sir, no, Daehyun said. If we leave now, the dreadnoughts will destroy the pods before they can escape. Someone needs to keep them distracted. Minho nodded in agreement. Around the bridge, the surviving crew stayed at their stations. Kyung-soo looked at his people and felt pride surge through his chest. These were soldiers of Earth, the finest humanity had ever produced. They had fought across time itself to be here. Very well. All batteries, continuous fire. Make them remember us. The Indomitable's guns never stopped firing, even as the ship broke apart around them. Dreadnoughts fell to the ancient warship's cannons. Too focused on the dying vessel to notice the escape pods, launching from the command carrier's breached dot in the chamber at the carrier's core. Yoonji and her marines made their last stand. The Vreth Queen thrashed, trying to escape, but the Singularity Drive's gravity well was already forming. It pulled at everything, dragging alien and human alike toward its center. 30 seconds. Someone gasped. Yoonji activated her communicator one last time. This is Major Yoonji to all human forces. Mission accomplished. The Queen dies here. Humanity survives. The drive detonated. Reality screamed as a pinpoint of infinite gravity formed in the heart of the command carrier. The black hole expanded in microseconds, consuming the Vreth Queen first, then her defenders, then the Marines who had brought death to her doorstep. The command carrier imploded, its massive hull crumpling like paper as it was dragged into the Singularity. 20 dreadnoughts were caught in the gravitational field, pulled together and crushed into a single point of destroyed matter. The Indomitable, still pressed against the carrier, died with it. Kyung-soo stood on his bridge as the ship disintegrated around him. He thought of Earth, his real Earth, the one he would never see again. He thought of his crew, who had trusted him until the very end. Not bad for ghosts, he said. And then the black hole took him too. The Singularity collapsed in on itself after 30 seconds, leaving only debris and silence. Of the 500 Vreth ships, fewer than 200 remained. Without their queen, the hive mind shattered. Ships broke formation, fleeing in random directions as individual captains tried to save themselves. The refugee fleet, watching from light hours away, saw the enemy formation collapse. Ji-woo stood in the command center, tears streaming down his face as the tactical display showed what had happened. They did it, Hana whispered beside him. They killed the queen. They broke the fleet. Signal the Vreth ships, Ji-woo ordered. Tell them that humanity offers peace. If they accept, they can leave this system and never return. If they refuse, we'll hunt down every last one of them. The Vreth, leaderless and terrified of these humans who had killed their queen with an ancient warship, accepted. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel and fled, disappearing into the dark between stars. 3 weeks later, the refugees returned to Omega-7. They found the station damaged but intact. The Indomitable's wreckage was scattered across space, a debris field of heroism and sacrifice. Ji-woo ordered every piece of the ship recovered. Engineers began welding the fragments together, creating a memorial station around the Indomitable's skeletal remains. We'll call it Indomitable Station, he said, so no one ever forgets what they did for us. In the months that followed, humanity began to rebuild. The Vreth Empire, stunned by the loss of their queen and fleet, sued for peace. Word of the battle spread across the galaxy. Humanity, the species that had been hunted to near extinction, had struck back with such ferocity that their enemies fled in terror. New colonies were established. Children were born under alien suns. The population of 200,000 began to grow again. Daehyun had survived, pulled from an escape pod by refugee ships. He joined the reformed Earth Defense Force, teaching tactics and gunnery. He wore a medal around his neck, engraved with the names of the Indomitable's crew. Minho graduated top of his class at the new military academy. He requested to be assigned to the first new warship humanity built. When asked what the ship should be named, the decision was unanimous: T-Case and Yunji, in honor of the major who had planted humanity's vengeance in the heart of their enemy. On the anniversary of the battle, Ji-Woo stood before a memorial wall carved with 3,000 names. The crew of the Indomitable, soldiers from the past who had saved the future. They came from 600 years ago, he said to the crowd gathered around him. They had lost everything. Their world, their families, their time. They should have despaired. They should have given up. He touched the wall gently. But they were human, and humans don't surrender. Not when others need us. Not when there's still breath in our lungs and strength in our hands. Behind him, construction continued on new ships, new stations, new colonies.